We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Drink it in, man.
Deep left side carry on. Picks on the block. At the 5. At the 2. At the 1 to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Drink it in, man.
Get up, Stafford throws. It is end zone. Caught! Oh, baby, what a catch! Kenny Galladay, you're a freak! What a catch! Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Cornbread! I love the Lions! Say it with me! I love the Lions!
Drink it in, man.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Detroit Koolaid, what is going on, everybody? We are back, and a few weeks ago, we promoted that we might have a guest, basically our first guest on the show. It's usually me and Grifka just talking Lions football, and I'm happy after some busy schedules and some things came up that today we're happy to have on Erik Schlitt of USA Today Lions Wire. A lot of you probably know him from the Detroit Lions Breakdown podcast. Erik, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I'm just glad we got to match our schedules up. It gets a little hectic this time of year for me, so I'm glad we were able to match up.
Absolutely. There's no better time than draft season. And Grifka, are you on the other end of the line, buddy? We can't forget about you, the star of the show.
Oh, yeah, I'm here, man. I'm here.
All right, sounds good. I haven't had to use the Grifka bell yet. So, Erik, what we're going to do is we're just going to talk some Lions football. Me and Grifka have some questions for you. It is the best time of year, man. It's draft season. I can't believe it's only a couple weeks away. So we're going to go ahead and just fire off some questions and get this thing rolling. So, sound like a plan?
Yeah, sounds great.
So Erik, the first thing I had for you, I know you've talked about it on your show, but I'm just interested if you could give us kind of a quick summary about your Quib score. I know you have really been diving into that, and it's really interesting that you developed this own like custom score / analytical system that you kind of use to judge who Bob Quinn's looking at, who the Lions might be interested in. So tell us a little bit about how you developed it and exactly what it is in kind of a short form there.
Yeah, so basically how it works is when Bob Quinn was hired as general manager 3 years ago, I wanted to get an idea of the types of players he would be looking to add to the Lions roster coming over from New England. So I went back and I looked at all the players that were drafted or signed by free agents while Quinn was in New England, at least when he was in a position to, impact those decisions. And I correlated all the measurements like 40 times and broad jumps and et cetera, and all the things that we get at the combines and the pro days. And I started looking for patterns at each position to see if there were commonalities that might give me an idea of different players that Quinn might target. So when I got a baseline of that, I added in the players that were existing on the roster, and then I got a nice format for a first year of what I thought Quinn would be looking for. It worked out pretty well. And then as time has passed, I've been adding more information into this database, and I've been able to fine tune it even more. So it's in its simplest form. Basically, I'm trying to figure out what traits players have that translate and that the Lions front office will be targeting. So, for example, like with the offensive line, that's a position that likes lateral movement, right? And with this schemes that since Bob Quinn has come in, they've had more of like zone blocking schemes. They wanted more athletic offensive linemen, and what we've seen is a increase in the short shuttle time for the offensive linemen. He brought in like 15 offensive linemen for workouts or signed them or drafted them that first year, and all of them were significantly lower in their short shuttle than what Detroit had done in the past. And so that kind of was a big, red light going off that, hey, this is an important area that they care about. And that's translated over into, the future drafts and the free agents that they've targeted since. And it works like this for every position. It's not just one category. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. Sometimes it's even 4 or 5. But each position is unique. And this year, what I've done is I've been able to expand it to even within the position, having like specific roles. Like, for example, not just what a receiver looks like, but what does a slot receiver look like compared to a outside receiver? So I've been able to get really specific with it this year. And the whole point of it is basically to narrow down the prospect pool so that Lions fans can focus on maybe 100 guys instead of 500 guys. And it worked out real well last year. I had really good response from it. And of the guys that I targeted, 5 of them actually passed the system. The one guy that didn't pass was the fullback, Bowden, because there's not enough information for me to create a quib for the fullback position. So everyone else, though, passed. And so that told me I'm definitely continuing to move in the right direction. And I've started putting out a series of articles that are narrowing the field of prospects for this year's class.
Nice. Well, I just have a quick follow-up, and then I'll kick it over to Grifka. So with your quib, you actually kind of take the overall scheme and also like what the Lions might look for in a type of player at all the different types of positions, but it does have more of a focus too on the athletic testing. It does the college production kind of play into it, or is it more just athletic testing and, hey, this guy fits the type of lineman, the type of slot, the type of DN the Lions would be looking for?
So Quib is focused entirely on the athletic measurements, and Quib is just one part of the system. While I use the Quib to narrow the prospects, the focus of the amount of prospects, you do have to understand what the prospects are capable of, and then that helps us narrow the field down even further. Oftentimes, I'll have maybe 6 players that all fit into one category, but 4 of them will fit the scheme and the other 2 don't. So even though those 2 players fit athletically, we have to also incorporate, okay, these guys don't fit schematically, and then we know we can kind of move on from them. So Quib is just the athletic part of it. There's still a film study portion of it that also helps us, but that's not technically the Quib. That's just part of our overall scouting process.
Okay, well, very cool. Like, I want to get that out right off the top. I know a lot. You've talked about it, and you've written some awesome articles, but I wanted to lay that out in the show. Let me kick it over to Grifka. We'll get into some Lions draft talk specific now. Grifka, what do you got for Erik, man?
Just to follow up on your quib, is there anybody that you think the Lions would be really targeting based on the analysis that you have done recently with the draft with like the 8th pick, or maybe somewhere free agent out there that they may be looking at with the numbers that you ran?
Well, there's usually quite a bit of number. I mean, there's usually quite a bit of prospects. It's the design is to kind of help our focus. So like if we're looking solely at the 8th pick, the first thing we have to do is say, okay, which players might be in consideration just based on talent, and then I'll use the Quib to kind of narrow that down. Based on that, I mean, I have 4 prospects right off the top that fit my system perfectly, and also from a schematic standpoint, I believe fit as well. And those 4 players are the ones that are at the top of most draft boards. Quinnen Williams, Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, and then Ed Oliver. Those 4 guys for me are the very top of this class, and they're the guys that they fit so well in both avenues that I think it would be hard to pass on either of them. If any of those four are there at number 8, I think it would be really hard for them to pass on that. Beyond those four, it gets a little bit more wide open. Then you have to factor in some other things. Like, for example, Rashawn Gary passes, but I don't think Gary is as nice of a fit with now that Trey Flowers is in the mix. So I think that his stock goes down a little bit. Whereas a guy like Brian Burns or Montez Sweat, their value goes up a little bit because they have a little bit more unique styles to their game.
Hey, real quick, Erik, this is where I bust on Grifka. Grifka, you can't ask a follow-up to my follow-up. We'll never get through our questions. This guy's time is precious, man. Come on. So are you going to do your question you actually had, Grifka, or is it me again?
I'm sorry, that just kind of crossed my mind. If he had somebody kind of targeted that, he saw at that pick. So I just kind of wanted to ask that.
His quib, what he does, Griff, so he has all these players that fit the quib at all the positions at every level at all the rounds of the draft. So tons of people fit it, but like you said, he narrowed down the top ones for you, which that was good. I've heard you talk about those 4, Erik, and I like those 4 you have, and like you say, 3 of them I don't think have much of a chance to be there. The Ed Oliver has been a big debate. So Grifka, if you got another one, go ahead.
Sure. Dealing with the draft, and there's talk of trading down. Is we've heard Atlanta, New England. Is there a specific target or range that you think the Lions may be looking at to trade down, or is kind of every spot open, depending on the deal?
Now that's a good question, Grifka. There you go. Go ahead, Erik.
No, I think a lot of things are open. One of the things that Bob Quinn is known for is his preparedness, and so he's going to run multiple scenarios. He does this every year. He runs multiple scenarios to determine what he thinks will happen at his spot, and then if he were to make a move, what will happen beyond that before he would pick again. So trading down with Atlanta, it does make sense because you can pick up another day 2 pick. You're only dropping around 6 spots. And then it still gives you some leverage to move back again if you wanted to. Really, the depth of this class is on day 2, in my opinion, and where their needs meet the depth. There's so many nice fits there on day 2: tight end, corner, guard, wide receiver. These are all great. You're going to find great players there on day 2, and if you can trade back, get an extra pick. Now you have your pick in the first, now 3 in on day 2. Now you can hit all 4 of those spots. But if they, move off of those needs because there's other talented players, there's lots of other players that are positions that are deep on day 2 as well. So I don't think they're married to that 8th pick at all. Like I said, there's 4 guys that I wouldn't trade out of the spot for. I don't know if those are the same 4 guys that the Lions wouldn't trade out for. I think they're looking right now to trade out and try and get as many picks in that top 100 as they can. Even if they get a pick that's on day 3, I wouldn't be surprised if they used day 3 picks to try and jump back up into the top 100, because that's really where the value is in this class.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The 3 teams I've heard the most about are Houston, Atlanta, and then I've heard some rumblings about Carolina here in the last few days. All those I love, kind of trading down to the mid-round, picking up picks, like you say, and still getting a great football player in the first round. I mean, if the deal was sweet, I'd even take a future, high pick if the deal was right. So I like that a lot.
I wouldn't be surprised if they even stressed some of the teams right behind them, like Denver and Cincy. And if there's a quarterback there that one of them wants, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to put pressure on them to move up. And then they could even then possibly shift back again and still be in the top, 20 with a couple extra picks out of it. They're in a nice spot. And the additions that they've made in free agency have allowed them to, have the flexibility to move where they need to be.
Yep. The only thing is I don't think they can fake people that ran a quarterback. I mean, you're pretty set on Stafford, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, they're going to. I would like them to add a quarterback in this class because Connor Cook and Savage aren't like, they're not ideal, but Savage is tolerable. Cook has a little bit upside, but beyond this year, I don't want to have to live with that as the backup situation. So adding a day 3 guy, if you can get a guy like Tyree Jackson that maybe slips down there, he would be a lot of fun if he's there in the 4th round. I know people are talking about him going in the 3rd, but he has so many raw edges right now. I think a team that uses a 3rd on him is really, I think it would take a lot of projection for a team to do that.
Yeah. Grifka, back to me here for another one.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Erik, so you broke down your top 4, which you said was like Bosa, Allen, Quentin, and then you had Oliver in there. So those like your top 4. But like I said, 3 out of those 4 we pretty much know will be off the board. I kind of wanted to drill down, because let's just say we're sitting at 8. I mean, everybody would always love a trade down, but you have to assume we're going to be at 8. I know this has been talked about across the board, but right now, if the draft's tomorrow and we're sitting at 8, we can't move out of that spot. Like, what do you think are the top 3 realistic targets for you, the guys that will pretty much be there and that you would be considering, and who you taking if you're Bob Quinn with those 3 realistic targets? Break that down a little bit for me.
So you're saying if Oliver's not there? Because
yeah,
if Oliver's there, he's my guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been on his train for a while. I don't know that Grifka loves him, but let's say he's gone, and then kind of your next tier. So we're talking like everybody's heard the Sweats, the Hawkinsons, the Brian Burns, all these different people like that.
I think there's a case that could be made for one of those defensive ends, like a Gary or a Burns or a Sweat. But I also have there's also some major flaws that go with each of those guys as well. The talent says that those 3 guys would be in the mix, but Gary he's somewhat repetitive for the Lions. I don't know how his path to the field would be as smooth as a guy like Burns or Sweat. But Sweat has some off-the-field issues from his time at Michigan State. I know from my Michigan State contacts that the stuff that he ran with a really bad crowd, and he ran with a crowd where a couple years ago there was a player out of Michigan State that the Lions weren't going to touch, that he was in that same crew, and so there's some bad vibes there with Sweat, even though he seems to fit a lot of what they're looking for. Things have been really quiet on Burns when we talk to our sources, myself and Jeff Risden, my partner over at Lions Wire. Nobody really talks about Burns. He makes a lot of sense to us, but it's awfully quiet around him. So while those 3 guys make sense from a value standpoint, I don't know if any of them are truly in the mix. From a talent standpoint, they should be. The tight end could definitely be in the mix. So like if you're looking at Hawkinson or Fant, again, I think 8's early. So I think they're going to do whatever they can to try and trade out if that's what their target is. And for me, both of them are pretty even. And I wouldn't be surprised if they targeted Noah Fant over Hawkinson. Big reason being is in my system, Noah Fant passes all the metrics for a tight end, but he also passes all the metrics for a wide receiver, and that's something that's really hard to do. And he's basically if he was a receiver instead of a tight end, he would still be one of the top 2 wide receivers in this class. He can fill 2 holes for you. He can fill a tight end hole and he can fill a wide receiver hole. He automatically becomes your 3rd target. He has the opportunity to grow to be their second most valuable target on this offense. So I do think Fant is a guy they would really consider along with those 3 edge guys. Then it gets a little tricky because there's no clear tight end. There's no clear offensive tackle who's a number 1 guy. There's no clear cornerback who's a number 1 guy. And so it gets a little bit harder to peg which guy it might be. Could it be Devin White or Devin Bush? Maybe. I think it's a little early to go off the ball linebacker, considering what they're doing in other spots. But Devin Bush would be a guy who could he could help Jared Davis. I'm sorry, Devin Bush could be a guy who could help Jared Davis quite a bit. And he could come in and really solidify that front. And so there's kind of an outside shot. He could be in the mix there as well. Erik,
let me put the heat on you before I kick it back to Griff.
Sure.
You brought up a lot of good names.
Sure.
You broke it down really good. You're Bob Quinn, or you're sending that card to the podium. Do you have a name or two? I don't want to pin you down if you don't want to, but if you had your ideal pick and you can't have those top four, who would Erik Schlitt select at 8 if you're stuck?
My number 5 guy is Rashawn Gary, and I know that's not I know I'm in the minority in that in a lot of ways, and I'm okay with that. But schematically, he fits. It's very rare to find guys at his size that can move the way he can. He's not a production guy, but he has the ability to just destroy plays. And again, this has kind of been my stance for a while, and I don't. There's no one else that's stepped up to back me off of him right now. So he would be my 5. But like I said, if he's there, I'm very open to trading as well, because like I said at the top, he's got some flaws to his game as well.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. The biggest thing that worries me about Gary is his mentality, sort of, I don't know if he has that NFL dog type mentality, but his athleticism, the way he gets off the football is incredible. Let me go ahead and throw it back to Grifka. But hey, Grifka, do you have your notepad? Did you take down notes about all that Montez Sweat? You've been touting him forever. Erik Schlitt just said, maybe not so fast, my friend.
Yeah, I hear him. I'll take it into consideration.
Okay.
Like you said, he does have the measurables, but
sure.
If the Lions are looking for somebody with they don't like character flaws, which they've said before, I mean, it's definitely a big red flag against him. So it's understandable.
Well,
absolutely.
Look at it this way too. With Sweat, they went to Mississippi State to watch Mississippi State games 3 times this year. They met with him at the Senior Bowl, and they met with him at the Combine. So they're very interested in him. It's just a matter of, are they willing to overlook some of those character flaws? Because from a measurement standpoint, he fits everything that they want. I mean, his arms are insane. They love arm length. They love guys that go to the Senior Bowl. They love fast, kind of these fast guys that can be both fast and quick. He's got it. He's got all of it. And so I just don't know. From everything that I've been told from a character standpoint is they won't touch him. They won't touch him. They won't touch him. All indicators say he's still in play.
Yeah, good stuff. Grifka, what do you got?
I know we've been discussing a lot of high round draft picks. Are there any mid round draft prospects that really interest you that may fit the Lions?
Let's narrow it down a little bit. You want like a day 2, day 3, offense?
Let's go day 3.
Okay.
Those late round guys where people are kind of like, they're scratching their head. They don't know this guy. Something like that.
Do you have any offense, defense, or just open for them?
Let's go defense, because I still think the team needs a little help on defense, even with their signings they've done.
You need some Grifka. You need offense, man. We just loaded up on D. Anyway, go ahead.
From an offensive or from a defensive standpoint, there's a couple of guys that I think could sneak into day 3 that would be really interesting to watch. Charles Omenihu from Texas. He's a guy who I think they put a lot of work in on. He is a potential.
You think he's day 3? Isn't that more of a day 2 guy?
I think he's fringe day round 3, round 4. I think he would be pick 111 in my book. I think they'd have to take him in the 4th round. It's very possible he goes in the 3rd. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like Omenihu, but
sure.
Yeah, right. That's not a bad range, so I got you.
If you want me to go a little bit further out, then let's see. All right. So one of the things that I think they're looking for. Let's say they don't get Sweat in the 1st round, and they still want that pass rushing, kind of hybrid stand up pass rusher guy. I butcher these names, especially like these good players. So this guy plays at Houston. It's Amiki Egbule. He plays at Houston. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I got you. I love that you picked like the hardest name to pronounce, either that or
Right.
the Penn State corner Warrior. So
God,
I'm glad you went with the other hardest one.
Egbule from Houston is very intriguing to me. He's a guy who I think again could be in that late round 3, early round 4 type range. He has the ability to play linebacker as well as be a pass rusher. So if you're in love with Josh Allen, but you can't get him, this is a guy who I think you can get a little bit later, who can give you that same. He's not going to give you the same type of impact, but that same stylistic impact. Off the ball guy who can rush off the edge, and he would be a really nice fit in there with Devin Kennard. The other guy is another TCU guy, Ben Banogu. I know I didn't pronounce that right either.
Good work.
He's another guy who I think will slide into day 3. But he fits that role. I think he can play a little bit off the ball. He's going to be a stand-up pass rusher. Those two guys are very appealing to me because they fit something that we all know is a big need, but it's not necessarily a starting role. It's a guy you could get on day 3, and you could find a way for them to be impactful in their first season as situational pass rushers. You want me to go to another spot or?
No, that's good actually. Okay. Right there. I mean, Derek's like saying loading up on offense. I still think they need a little help on defense. So
yeah, absolutely, they still do. They still have needs on both sides.
Yes, both sides. I'm just saying we may want to skew, or we need some more playmakers as well. So everybody, defense is the easy call, but I want to get some people that can put it in the paint, score touchdowns from deep too, because we got to go up over the top a little bit. But those late round defensive gems you can never go wrong there. So yeah, you hit on some good names. Grifka, let me hit him with a quick one here. So I know we're talking draft, Erik, but one of the biggest things for me is how's the opposite side of Slay going to shake out? I mean, I feel like I loved what we did in free agency. I love, kind of how they're making this defense go from a somewhat porous defense early last year to a pretty dominant unit towards the end of the year with snacks and whatnot. Mm-hmm. In regards to opposite of Slay, I mean, I know we brought in players. Do you think they'll address that in the draft, or can we get a player that can really be not necessarily a lockdown guy, but a guy that's substantially better than what we've had over there, or is he already on the roster? Because I always feel like opposite of Slay and that slot corner, which we think we shored up with Coleman, has just been killing us the last few years. I mean, just can't guard anybody at those positions. So what do you think in regards to the opposite corner, considering if Coleman's in the slot?
Yeah, in the last 3 seasons, I was just talking to one of my PFF guys yesterday, and he said, if anyone wants to argue Coleman wasn't a good pick, he said, bring up the fact that in the last 3 years, Detroit has been in the bottom 4 in slot coverage. And
terrible.
And so Coleman was a desperate position or adding Coleman to that desperate position was very necessary. I don't think cornerback 2 is on the roster. It's possible that Melvin is cornerback 2 to start the season, but I don't know if he ends the season, and I don't think he's like the long-term answer either. Now, I'm a big Mike Ford guy, but Mike Ford, while he showed well in his first outing, in his next couple, he showed that he's still developing, and that's fine. And I'm comfortable with Mike Ford being a reserve on the outside. I don't think he's winning that job anytime soon, and I don't think Marcus Cooper is either. So Melvin seems to be the leader for me. But personally, I think cornerback 2 is going to be a position that they address in the first 3 rounds. And there's a lot of guys that I like out there that fit, and there's a lot of full Quib qualifiers in the first 100 picks. I think I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 8 of my top 100 corners are all pass fully. And then there's a couple other guys after that I think could sneak into the third round that would also fit fully. So there's about 10 guys that I think they could bring in that could challenge for a starting role. And some of them could beat Melvin out before training camp's over. Other guys it might take till mid-season. But I think that will be a position that the future of opposite Slay is not currently on the roster.
Yeah, good stuff there. They always say it's a passing league. Well, I think you got to defend the pass too, and I think we've just been really bad at that the last few years. As I said, you hit on some good ones. I think the sweet spot is like the beginning of the second round, or like you said, in a trade down, if they get a late second or a third, maybe getting a corner in that position. Grifka's talked a lot about Greedy and these other people, but they don't necessarily fit the Lions, even if they're talented and whatnot. But I think it's got to get addressed, no doubt about it. So, Erik, I know your time is valuable. Me and Grifka both have a few more. Maybe we could rapid fire, or you got some more time for us today?
I got some more time.
All right, perfect. Hit him with another one, Grifka, one of your gems. Have you noticed I haven't used the bell at all, Grifka? I'm being nice with Erik on the line.
Yeah, I have noticed that, and I'm like, I was wondering when it's going to come through. So,
there you go.
Since Derek still believes there's a huge need for offense. Are there any small school offensive players, wide receivers, tight ends that may interest the Lions that you can think of?
Yeah, my top tight end from a small school is Josh Oliver.
Oh no,
he checked.
That's great.
He
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, because I took him in a mock draft and Derek just ripped me for it. So okay.
Oh, not a fan. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I have him at tight end 6 right now. So he's pretty high on my board. He's a guy, again, in that third round, fourth round range. I think he is nice value for him. Again, like with Noah Fant, he fits a role in that move position. And for if you're looking at small school, he's my tight end. On receiver, there's a lot of small school guys. You could say, well, UMass is pretty small school, so Andy Isabella makes a lot of sense. But I think you're probably looking for like a name that's a little bit smaller than him, since his name's out there. So let's say Keelan Doss out of UC Davis. There's a small school guy. He is a big slot / vertical guy. Got injured in the bench press at the combine, so he didn't get a chance to go. But he is a guy who, at 6'2", he could fill that role that they're missing. Like, again, if you're not landing that tight end that can operate out of the slot, then you're going to look for a big slot receiver, and Doss makes a lot of sense. I think we've heard Jamal Custis' name out there. Syracuse isn't as small, but he's not as well known of a name. Let me see if I can get a running back guy for you. My favorite running back from a small school is Bruce Anderson from North Dakota State. I call him Kerryon Johnson light, because he runs just like Kerryon Johnson. He has extraordinary patience behind the line of scrimmage, but when he sees it, he hits it, and he's real smooth through there. He can run with power. He has third down capabilities as well. So, if you're looking for a Kerryon clone that has some developmental upside, that Bruce Anderson is the guy, the small school guy at running back that I'd be targeting.
Okay.
All right, Griffin, let me get back in here. Hey, Erik, you talked about Brian Burns earlier. This is a guy that I had kind of off my radar for a long time, because I felt he was that light edge / outside backer that, he might be that jack linebacker, but he also just didn't seem to be heavy enough. All these other things didn't seem to fit from what I had kind of read up on or looked at. But then I watched this guy on film, and I think he's gained 23 pounds bulking up to like the 250, 60, whatever he is now. I watched this guy and I was impressed, man. He could bend when he was getting near the quarterback. He finished plays. I mean, I've heard people really high on him, and I've also heard, others not so high. I know you brought him up earlier. This is a guy I've liked more as I've got deeper into the process. Like, talk to me a little bit about, do you like Burns? What do you like about him? But more so, like, does Matt Patricia like him? Does Bob Quinn like him for this scheme and this team as it's currently constructed?
Yeah, so Burns was primarily a down defensive end for Florida State, and he was listed at 235, which is why everybody was a bit concerned about his weight. Checked in at 249 at the combine, which is legit. He has basically like a Leonard Floyd type upside, where he can be that stand-up linebacker. There were some questions because he didn't stand up a whole lot at Florida State, but he answered a lot of those at the combine. His ability, he showed that he can still translate that bend from a standing position as well as a down position. Because there were some questions: can he add weight and still keep that bend? Can he keep that bend from a standing spot instead of a down spot? And he did get a lot of those check marks off the board. I like him quite a bit. I think he would be in the mix for me at 8. The info that I've been told, though, is that they're not as high on him as the fans are. And so I would say, proceed with caution and don't get your hopes up. But they throw a lot of smoke screens out there, too. Like, he just visited today. So they're showing that there is interest. But, how much interest? I've been told if they trade back, I think they would be more interested in him than they would be at 8. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and you brought it up. I did bring up, man, when he was at the combine, this guy caught the football and moved like a big tight end or a big slot. I mean, I was really impressed. And then when I went back and put on more tape of him, like you said, his hands in the dirt, he's in that motorcycle stance, he's coming off the line. And I mean, I was impressed. Like you said, either in a trade down or, hey, if he's one of the people in that pool and they think that he can add, getting after the quarterback, I think he's somebody that we have to consider, especially if he's bulking up a little bit. That's, intriguing and nice to see as well. So I'll go ahead and kick it back to Griff. Thanks for breaking down Burns a little bit there.
Sure.
Yeah. With the signings the Lions have already made, and I realize there's still a few names out there in free agency, do you feel there's anybody out there that the Lions may be targeting right now and just kind of waiting for the draft to finish before they make a play for him?
And let me throw in a caveat, do you think they make a trade, Erik? Like, I've talked about maybe some big trades, or they've been hoarding some money, any players they might be on, but also you see a trade happening at all?
Trades are always hard. I've never really been able to predict trades very well, just because they're really secretive about them. Like no one saw the Snacks trade coming, right? The Golden Tate one made sense because we were trading away. But as far as guys that they're looking at, it's really hard to get a real gauge of who they might be going after. And when you look at where their big needs are on the roster, the only position where they would trade, I think, for a big money guy would maybe be cornerback. And, are they willing to invest a lot of money at that position when you already have a lot of money invested in Slay? So, could they be interested in Patrick Peterson, because there's some connections with the front office in Arizona? Possibly, but I don't have anything to substantiate that. That's just speculation. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, to Grifka's point, any players, any vets you think are sitting out there that might interest them, that they're just waiting them out?
Yeah, I thought Savage was one. Savage was a guy that I said I know they wanted a veteran quarterback, and his connections to the coaching staff just made sense that they were going to bring him in at some point. Zach Brown is sitting out there, and he's a good, he's one of your better free agents that is just sitting there that they haven't really done a whole lot with. Ezekiel Ansah's still out there. You could maybe entice the the Lions could throw some money his way and see if they could bring him back on a cheaper contract.
It's Grifka's favorite player, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's coming back personally, but the longer he sits out there, the more his price comes down.
I wouldn't mind it.
Ricky, you could see them reunite with Ricky Jean-Francois because they need a one more rotational defensive interior guy. So they could be looking his way again. But I don't think there's anybody out there that they're specifically waiting on. I think they're just kind of waiting. They've addressed most of the spots that I think they wanted to ahead of the draft. And I'm not sure there's a guy out there other than those couple that could come in and make a giant impact on this roster, just because their big needs are like we said earlier, cornerback, a move tight end, and maybe a right guard, depending on what they want to do with Crosby. And with those three spots, there's no one out there in free agency that are going to really blow you away. So I think the money saving thing is more about the pending CBA that's coming down the road and trying to save money for the future rather than, loading up for a big name guy.
Okay. Interesting. I just have two. I'll kind of maybe bundle these together. One of them we kind of talked a little bit about before, but this is what interests me, Erik. So me and Griff could get into lots of arguments about the draft and value of players, how you move around the draft board, all this type of stuff. Like, I remember last year, I liked Carry On. The only thing I didn't like is that we moved up, giving up resources and we didn't have much. I'm happy now that he's on the team. He's obviously looked really good. Hopefully he can stay healthy and produce. But what's your take on, it seems like Bob Quinn, he talks about, I'd like to move down and you need a partner, but he always seems to be good up. Which I don't mind, like, but, everybody in Detroit's always had more picks, and he's been giving up picks to go up. So what's your take on that? And do you think this could be the draft he really does move down? And then kind of a combo meal, like everybody's talking about, we got to get another running back. We got to get this. I'm looking at the roster and kind of thinking, especially since CJ was added, and if Amendola can stay healthy, maybe those aren't as big of needs as people are thinking. Kind of take both of those if you can, and then Grifka's maybe got one more, and then we'll get you out of here.
So the way I think Bob Quinn sets his board is I think he says, I have this many guys that I like at this position, and they mark it off like in tiers, right? Mm-hmm. And with Carry On Johnson, I believe they were targeting a running back, and I believe he was the bottom of that tier that they were willing to not walk away from. And so when they saw that he was there, and based on the information that they knew there was a team 2 picks after 43, I forget which team it was, that was targeting him, he knew that Carry On wasn't going to make it to their original pick. And so he was aggressive and he went after it, and he made that. And I'm okay with that. If you have a specific need, that was a very obvious need. And he was the last of the guys. I'm blanking on the guy who went to Washington after Geis that everybody loved, right?
Yep.
They did not like Geis, not even a little bit. They didn't feel like his personality would mesh with the locker room. They didn't like some of his antics. They thought he was a fine player, but he was a guy that they were not willing to touch. And so Carry On, he was it. After Carry On, there wasn't a back that they thought could make an impact on the roster the way they wanted. And so I'm fine with them being aggressive and going after guys like that. Same thing with Deshaun Hand. They looked at him and they said, he shouldn't still be here. Let's go get this guy. And they were willing to give up a pick in the future. And even though it was a third rounder, they said, this is the guy he's going to be able to impact our defense. Now, I don't think they thought he would impact them as much as he did, but I'm okay with him being aggressive, and I'm okay with him trading up when he has these specific, targets in mind. He's very analytical with how he sets his board, and so the moving up doesn't bother me much at all. the second part of your question was the needs at the skill positions. So on my board, I think that they could upgrade a wide receiver spot, a tight end spot, and a running back spot. And they're going to want that competition at all of those spots. Jesse James and Michael Roberts are fine. Logan Thomas is an upside guy that you're taking a shot at. But do you feel confident with Logan Thomas or Jerome Cunningham as your number 3 tight end going into the season? I don't. And so that's why I think tight end is definitely going to be something high on their board. At receiver, Golladay and Jones are obviously your big ones, and Amendola is fine. But they need a future guy that goes beyond 2020 because Galladay's contract's up in 2020. Jones's contract's up in 2020. Amendola is a single contract this year. If they're going to re-sign Golladay and maybe not re-sign Jones, it would be beneficial to have a wide receiver that's on the roster with some experience. And that's why you target a wide receiver in this draft, because you're trying to get a guy that's going to be there for the future. If you can get a guy that can beat out Amendola, even better. If Amendola is your 4th receiver, great. I don't think he's locked in at that 3rd spot. So wide receiver is definitely high on my board as a need as well. And as far as running back, they really need a depth option. I mean, Zach Zinner's great and people love him, but he's an average NFL backup. He's a fun story and he's a great person. But if Kerryon gets hurt and let's say CJ Anderson shows a little bit of Blunt 2.0, are you comfortable with Zach Zenner being your starting running back? And I don't think that they are, and beyond maybe the one game he was last season. So I do think that they're looking to add a running back that they can develop and possibly take over because, while Kerryon signed for 2021, CJ Anderson, Theo Riddick, Zach Zenner are all on 1-year deals. Or in the final year of their deal. So again, this is a position where you're drafting for the future. And that's why I still think they'd be fortunate to add a guy if they can. If they can't, I think it's a position where you can make do with what you have. But I do think if the value is there, I wouldn't be surprised to see him take one on day 3.
Yeah, I'm going to throw back to Grifka, but the only thing I want to say is that, I love how you broke it down. I love how you sort of, I wasn't sort of saying receiver, these guys aren't needs, but I'm always cognizant of, the value. If you're taking a slot in this high 2nd round and making Amendola, like you said, bumping him down out of the starting lineup, whatever, I don't know. I feel like you do that with a later pick because those top couple rounds are so valuable. Go get somewhere where you're really weak, like I say, the corner 2, or beef up that edge rush, whatever it may be. But like I say, I know these needs need to get filled, but that extra running back, I'm going and getting him in the 4th, 5th, or later. You know what I mean? Finding a guy that is maybe better than Theo or can do the similar things to Kerryon. Like you say, Bruce Anderson, your guy, he's going to be there later. So that's all I'm saying is maybe you can fill this depth and find a star later and use those early picks in other spots. So like I say, I like how you broke it down. That's just my take, is that everyone's got us taking a receiver in the high 2nd. We got a tight end maybe in the 1st. I mean, I think you could bump those back a little bit and still be okay. But Grifka, greatest question for Erik, or bundle 2 quick ones, and then we're going to let him plug his podcast, his Twitter, everything. And he's just been awesome on the show, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just have a quick one. Me and Derek have talked about this in the past with Matt Stafford. Seems to have lost a little bit of swagger. They have a new offensive coordinator come in Darrell Bevell. Do you see much difference in the offense, or do you still think it might be kind of like a safe offense? Check down Charlie. Maybe it's just bringing a new OC in just to kind of get a different voice in his head.
No, I think it's going to be different. When you look at how Bevell has operated in the past, there is an emphasis on the run game, which is something they tried to establish last year. But Bevell likes to go vertical, and that's not something that Jim Bob did as much. He was comfortable with the short passes, but there was also a personnel issue that kind of forced them to go dink and dunk. With Golladay and Jones on the outside, they need somebody that can threaten in the middle to alleviate some of their pressure, because neither Marvin nor Kenny, they don't really separate themselves from the corners very well. And when you can't separate from corners, it allows the defense to do different things with their safeties, bring them down, cover the slot a little bit more. And when you don't have a guy who can open things up in the slot, then it puts more pressure on the outside and it makes it harder to convert those longer passes. So the dinking and the dunking was, I think, by design, because from a personnel standpoint. I also think with Stafford was banged up at the end of the year. You really saw a shift when they traded Golden Tate. You really saw a shift in how they attacked the offense. They just didn't have the weapons to go out and do what they wanted to do. When Carrion also got hurt at that end of the year, which impacted the success in the running game, which also put a little bit more pressure on Stafford. So all those things can go wrong again, and then we could be back in the same spot. But the goal here, by adding these talented guys, these other receivers and tight ends and running backs, is so that you don't get in this situation again. The Bevel likes to attack deep, and if you can sustain injuries and if you can get guys that can create separation over the middle, well, then you start opening things up a little bit more. And now with that vertical attacking game, it plays better into Stafford's approach. It goes back to, a few years ago, even pre-Jim Bob Cooter, when he was very successful with Linehan and stuff. So, I think that we could see a change in the approach. And I think Stafford should benefit from that change in that offensive attack.
Okay. Good.
Well, Erik, man, we thank you so much. You've brought the knowledge. Me and Grifka, like I say, we love coming on this show, talking football, having a bunch of fun. You brought a bunch of great points, broke it down just as your podcast is named. Go ahead and throw anything you want to promote out there, and then we'll go ahead and close this show down.
You can find me on Twitter. It's Erik, Erik Schlitt, Schlitt. It's just at Erik Schlitt. I write for the Lions Wire, which is part of that USA Today social media group network, and put out articles every day. I've got my defense's quib stuff is starting in the morning, so we're going to start with the defensive line there. I've already got all the offensive players done at this point and published and out there as well. My podcast is, like you said, the Detroit Lions Breakdown Podcast. We usually tape every week. With the off season, we sometimes will delay things a little bit where we're not always consistently on Thursdays, but we always put one out every week, and we take questions. So if people submit questions on Twitter, then I add them on the podcast, and we try and address as many things as we can. Try and be as fan friendly as we can here. So, yeah, those are the main avenues. I enjoy talking football. I enjoy interacting online as much as I can, and so feel free to reach out.
Everybody out there listening, Erik is a tremendous follow. He knows his stuff. He's always, like he said, great to the fans, great to people that have questions for him. I just kind of connected with him on Twitter, and always, like I say, always has a good take on things, and just been awesome. So you've been really generous with your time. It was awesome to have you on the show. We can't thank you enough.
I appreciate it. I had a good time.
Absolutely. So for me, for Grifka, and thank you so much, Erik, we're going to go ahead and get up out of here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Take care, everybody. We're out.
Pack the bag, start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions.
Drink it in, man.